Okay, like she said, my name is Sheri Wise. I'm 38 years old. I have Morquio A, and I was diagnosed when I was 6 years old, and that was way back in the early 80s. There was no internet, no Google. Nobody had cell phones. It was still the one on the wall with the long springy cord that stretched out to 27 feet. And so when they diagnosed me, they pretty much just gave me my parents the name, and that was it. There just wasn't much information. And so I have two younger sisters. They're both average height. They're, not affected at all. And so my parents, they did not raise me any differently than my sisters. I did everything that they did. I grew up on a farm in northern Oklahoma, cattle and wheat farm. And so, I did everything. There wasn't any, they didn't, they didn't put me in a corner. They didn't put me in a bubble. It was the same way. Do we have the clicker for the slides? I'll make the tall people run.
Make them run.
Okay, there we go. So here I am. I was actually in junior high, I think, there. So we're talking, 90s, forgive the haircut. My mom was fond of the Sally Field football helmet. But yeah, I rode horses. We loved it. Grew up on a farm. Here I am. We rode the three-wheeler. I had surgery. That's the bottom left. Once again, my mom was in charge of my haircuts when I was younger. And so I looked like the love child of Little Orphan Annie and Ronald McDonald. It was horrible. In the middle, I was in the pageant at my high school. I won, and then the middle sister, is standing beside me. She won the next year. So it's kind of like I gave my title to her. So it's kind of cool. And then, I grew up on a farm, so we showed livestock in 4-H. That was one of my pigs. He didn't last but 1 year. And we won't go there, but yeah, I went on trips in, school. Went on a cruise, snorkeling with my sister. That's the youngest sister there with me. Rock climbing, no. I didn't climb up the wall, the handheld. There's no way. They hauled me up there, and then I got to rappel myself down, so that was really cool. But, I love going to the lake. We have a houseboat, private dock on a lake in Oklahoma, so I love going out there. Went to Washington, D.C. a couple years ago in the advocacy group. Got to speak to some of our legislators about, healthcare issues and all. I went to the University of Oklahoma, went to college. I graduated with 32 people in my high school class, and then I went straight to a major NCAA university. So when I graduated high school, there was about 500 kids total, kindergarten through senior. And then I go to OU, and there's thousands of people. And all of a sudden, if I did something, my parents did not hear about it before I got home. So that was really cool. I liked that. Graduated high school. I don't sit still. I'm always going out. I'm always doing stuff. A lot of it is on Facebook. There's a few things that the statute of limitations with my parents will never expire, so those things don't get posted. Because even whenever I'm 97, I will still get grounded. But yeah, I did the indoor skydiving thing. That was amazing. Here I am with, my mom and my stepdad are semi-retired, and so they have cattle now as a hobby instead of like a job. And so those are her fur children. Those are her other grandchildren. And sometimes they take priority over us two-legged kids. And so they have names. The ones that have names, they don't get on the dinner table. The boys don't get named. I'm just saying, I'm sorry, it's sexist, but that's the way it goes. But, sometimes that's one of my niece and nephew. We'll go to the zoo. I'll pull the wagon with the kids and the ice chest. We'll spend the whole day at the zoo. I love to go fishing. That's, my niece there. We're always doing stuff outside. I have a full-time job. I work for the Oklahoma City Utility Department and their customer service. So when people are mad about their water and trash, yes, they call and scream at me because apparently it's my personal problem that they didn't pay a bill or that there was a water main break and they weren't notified 2 days in advance. And yeah, but so yeah, there I am at work. The middle, I get my ERT every week. I have it on Wednesdays. So I work 7 to 6, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So I get my full 40 hours in. So on work days, I get up at 4:45 in the morning. I'm out the door by about 5:30. And then I don't get home until 6:45 at night because it's, I live 20 miles away from my work. So it's a long day. And I drive a Nissan Cube. I just have pedal extensions. Those are the same pedal extensions I got when I started driving back in 1996, and they are still working, which kind of shocks me. I've gone through several car seats. My first one, we took a seat out of one of our boats, so it was so heavy that I couldn't move it at all, and then my mom had to pad it up with like quilt batting, and then she wrapped it in naga hide, which is like that plastic fake leather. In Oklahoma, she wrapped a car seat in naga hide. I blistered my buns so many times getting into my car, and I would never remember to put a towel down over it because I was too busy to take time to do that. But yeah, I mean, don't put limits on your kids. Your kids are going to tell you what they're capable of, and as a parent, you're going to know, okay, that's probably not something you're going to be capable of doing. I am not going to audition for the WNBA. I mean, I know it's not going to happen, so I'm just not going to, I'm not, there's a lot of things I know I physically can't do, but there are so many other things that I can do, and I can do well. Like, some of us in here, we're going to beat everybody at hide and go seek. Because seriously, Blair, stand up. You're never going to win hide and seek. I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry. But, there are other things that we excel at so much better. And, especially public speaking. I mean, maybe not getting in front of people is your thing, but people see us and they're drawn to us. And so getting the word out, that's one of my things. But one of my pet peeves, and I don't want to step on any toes or anything, but is whenever parents put limits on their kids that they don't need to. I mean, everybody in here has a different level of independence. They have different skills. They have different abilities. And we're all limited. Even the people that don't have MPS or ML, everybody, even the average people, everyone has limits. It doesn't matter. But you know your own limits. So don't put limits on your kids that they don't need. One of the best blessings that I ever had growing up is my parents never limited me beyond reason. Like my mom said, if you ever go skydiving, I don't want to know about it until you're back on the ground. So, you have to be realistic. I don't like seeing people that are fully capable of being out and independent and having, I don't like the word normal, but, a typical life, but because they were raised in a bubble, they don't know how to do that. You've got to take charge of your own being and get out there and experience life. That's what we're here for. We're not here to just, put baby in the corner. It's just you have to live life. I've gone to football games. I cook. Luis, a lot of people here know Luis. He's like an icon. Yeah, I'm sorry, he's a Texas fan. I went to OU, Boomer Sooner. So there's that big, rivalry. He does this stuff. It's backwards. It's like this. Hook 'em horns is down. But, the Super Mario mushroom, it did not make me grow big. I tried. It did not work. False advertising. But I have some friends that they do monster makeup for the Comic Cons and for movies. They love using me as a demo dummy because I get more attention than just your average model. And so, I've been a zombie. Whatever that green thing in the corner is, I have no idea. It was something the guy dreamed up the night before, literally. And then I've been like a steampunk marionette whatever. That was, I was a zombie out. I actually stopped traffic. There was a police officer that saw me. A friend of mine came around the corner, started laughing at me so hard in my zombie makeup, she fell over and started laughing. So I ran over there and I acted like I was eating her brains. Cop stopped traffic, got out, put his hand on his gun, and said, "Is everything okay here?" And we both just kind of looked at him like, "Are you serious?" I said, "I'm eating her brains, go away." And so I had a friend that worked for the local police department, and I said, "Please tell me that cop had a dash cam, because I want that." "No, he's a rookie." Those are the ones that need the dash cams, not the ones with 20 years experience. But, it's just, I have fun with my height. I don't let it, let anything. That's Kane Hodder. Anybody seen Jason, the horror movie? He kills people. He was at a Comic-Con, and he had a booth. He was taking $20 from anyone that wanted a picture with him. I walked by modeling my makeup, and he came out of his booth and said, "I want my picture with you." And I said, "That's fine, but I don't want a copy, and I'm not paying you money." He said, "That's fine." So yeah, that's me with Kane Hodder, and it was kind of cool. But I'm not paying money to take my picture with someone that puts their pants on the same way I do, even though they're like 5 times as big. But my dog uses me as a pillow. I ride wave runners at the lake. My niece plays travel softball. So, especially last summer, we were home one weekend all summer that we were not at a tournament somewhere. And I don't sit still. Here's my sisters. I have 2 younger sisters, and my mom is the one on the top on the right. We're always getting into trouble. Shenanigans is like our hashtag. But, my mom came with me to Minneapolis to the MPS last year. She'd never been to an MPS conference before. Last year was the first time my mom had ever met anyone else with Morquio. And so it was definitely, eye-opening for her. But I'm the only Morquio in Oklahoma, so there's just not that opportunity. But as you can see, we don't take life seriously. She's bopping me on the head because I said something sarcastic on the plane. But, here I am with my nieces. Growing up, my nieces and nephew, they would always measure themselves on me as they got taller and taller and taller. And finally we're the same height, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting measured on them as I go down and down and down on them, and they think it's the funniest thing in the whole world. But, I love loading up my nieces and nephew and just getting in the car and we'll just go. It's like I'll text their parents, "I'm taking your kids." "Where are you going?" "I don't know. I'll have them back before they go to college because I'm not paying for that." But, there's so much life to experience. And, there's nothing out there that we can't do. Go on a cruise. I drive the boat. Go out and have fun. Go vote. Get married. There's no limits on anything that you want to do. You may just have to do it in a different way, but you can still do it. Medical conditions put enough limits on it. Don't limit yourself. If you want to do it, figure out a way.
Thank you, Sheri. Thank you so much. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Klein. She's going to talk about knowledge is power, mastering life with a rare disease.
Hello. Is it on? Yes. Good. Okay. Yeah, right. I'm Jennifer Klein. I am 26 years old, and I recently just graduated from North Carolina State with my master's in physiology. And you can read a little bit more about my bio if you want to. It's in the book. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about living your best life. And honestly, at this stage in my life, I am doing absolutely everything I want to do. And I would say in this moment, I am living my best life. And I'm just going to share a few steps of how I got to where I am and what I've done in my early adult years to get to this point. So steps 1 through 5. The first one I would say is know your limits and know yourself. Be honest and realize what you can and can't do. We can do many things. You just have to modify what you can do. We can't do everything, but we can do a lot of things. The second one is set reasonable and attainable goals. These can be small or big. They don't have to be big things. If it's just getting up and walking to the bathroom and not using the scooter, that's a good goal. The third one is modify the world around you to accomplish these goals. And I have a couple of stories to share with you about how I did that as I was going through school and getting my bachelor's degree. 4 is always fight for what you want. And 5 is work hard and be persistent. It feels like we're always fighting for what we want and always working hard because there are challenges we have to overcome that many other people don't have to, but that doesn't change regardless of achieving our goals. We still have to keep working hard and keep moving forward. So the first one, know your limits and know yourself. I definitely think it's okay to push yourself and it's okay to push your boundaries. I think you grow as a person when you do push those boundaries. You should just be safe when you are doing it. Always have a backup plan and surround yourself with people you trust when you are going to push those boundaries. Story behind this, I was 18, my first semester of college, and Halloween is my favorite holiday, and I wanted to go to a haunted house. It is the largest haunted house outside of Detroit. I actually think it's the largest haunted house in the United States. It takes you an hour and a half to get through. You have to sign a waiver. They're allowed to touch you. And I really wanted to go. It's my favorite holiday, so I'm going to go. My backup plan was I was with one of my very good friends, Chris. He is a linebacker. And so I brought him and my other friend, Sarah. And I was like, oh, Chris will protect us. You know, we have one guy, 2 girls. It'll be fine. Like, he'll walk with us through the haunted house. We'll come to find out when we get there, he is separated from us. And they did that on purpose. So we would have more of a scare. And so there goes my backup plan. I had a backup plan. It wasn't successful. About 45 minutes through, we were attacked by a T-Rex in the haunted house. It was the Jurassic Park theme era of the haunted house. And I fell, and a bunch of people fell on top of me, and I ended up breaking my hip and pelvis. Yeah, so regardless of my backup plan and all of the steps I took to try to be safe, doing something I wanted to do, there were still consequences. So I definitely say push your boundaries, but be prepared for the consequences if you're gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, so set reasonable and attainable goals. So after that, after I broke my hip and pelvis, I ended up having a double hip replacement, actually a hip reconstruction on one side. And all I really wanted to do was be able to walk. I wanted to be able to get around and live a normal life and be somewhat physically active because I was physically active when I was a younger kid. So after I had gone through my 2 hip surgeries, I was on bed rest for 6 months with one of them because there were a lot of complications. I decided that skiing was something I wanted to do. I had never done it, and on my 25th birthday, I took a group of my friends and we went skiing. And like Sheri said, some things you just shouldn't tell your parents until after you get home. And I did not tell my mother that I was going skiing until I was there. Had no idea. She had no idea what I was doing. And we hired a French ski instructor. And I told him about my condition and my surgeries, and he looked at me with this blank stare. Like, he was mortified that I was about to get on skis and go down the ski slope. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, just, you need to teach me how to fall, so if I fall, I don't hurt myself. There has to be a way to do this without injuring myself. And so he guided me down the hill. We did the bunny slopes. We practiced for a couple of hours. I never fell. I have good balance. After my hip replacements, I have very good balance. And I went down the green slopes. I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't do a black diamond, but I skied. And that was just one goal I wanted to do. I probably will never do it again. I have no desire to do it again. But it was just one thing I wanted to do to get out of the way to say that I did it. The other thing I wanted to do was do a 5K, and running is absolutely something I cannot do. And my orthopedic surgeon told me that I would never be able to run. So I jogged the first couple minutes with everyone as we started out. And then I jogged as we were going through the finish line, and I walked the rest of the way. And I still did a 5K. I just modified the way I did it, but I still did a 5K. When everyone was on their second and third laps, I was still on my first, and we were just chugging along, and it was fine. And then academic-wise, going to grad school and pursuing a career in medicine is something that I've wanted for the past several years. So I went ahead and applied to graduate school and graduated with my master's in physiology. And it was hard, but these were all goals I set for myself, and I tried not to compare myself to others. I tried to just go at my own pace, and it worked out. I'm 26, just graduated with my master's, so I'm living my life. So yeah, like when I was working on my bachelor's and I was younger, this was me recovering from surgery, and I was very determined not to have this surgery. I didn't want it to stop me from going to school, and I didn't want it to put a halt on my life. We all have things to do. Just because we have health issues and we have this condition doesn't mean our life stops. We were actually talking about this morning. We still have to keep going. We can't stop for every little thing. There has to be a way to modify these health issues that we have in order to have our lives stay somewhat normal. So my solution to this problem was to take online classes, and I did that the semester I was recovering from surgery. I was lucky enough that my school allowed me to do that. My degree allowed me to do that. It still took me 5.5 years, but I was on track, and I kept chugging along. So that's just one example of how I modified my circumstances in order to keep going. And fighting for what you want. So, okay, this is a big one because I know everyone gets tired, and we're always fighting, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally. We feel like there's always an uphill battle in front of us, and there is. But if you fight hard enough, it will pay off. And one thing I have always wanted to do that I didn't get a chance to do until recently was to travel the world. And I just got back from the absolutely amazing country of Portugal. Woo, Portugal. And I visited Spain while I was there too. And it's something I've never been able to do. I haven't had the time. My health hasn't been in a good enough condition to be able to do it. And I also had to save up the money because traveling is not all that cheap. So I did. I saved up for a couple of years. I drained my savings account, but I just went on the trip of a lifetime. And I was able to work in a hospital there and look at universal health care and look at everything going on. And these were just a couple of the pictures that I have from my trip in Portugal. And I mean, it wasn't hard to do this. I've saved up for years because this is something that I really wanted. I worked, I paid my way through my master's program. I moved back in with my lovely mom who loves to cook for me. I know she does. And do my laundry and things. And this was just like one thing. So I had to, modify my lifestyle a little bit, give up a little independence, but I thought this was worth it. So like I was saying, if you work hard and you're persistent, your hard work will pay off. These are a couple of the photos, and this is a dirty little secret of mine, which I don't like to share, but I'll share with you guys. I'm trying to get into medical school, and I've taken the MCAT 3 times. The first 2 I voided because I didn't feel confident enough in myself and my abilities to score it, so I just scratched it. I just took it for the 3rd time in June, and my score was lower than I wanted it to be. But it is what it is, and I applied to medical school, and we'll see what happens. But, I'm still working hard, and if I have to take the MCAT again, I'll take it again. If I have to apply to medical school because I don't get in this time, I'll apply again, and it's all okay, and we're just going to keep on chugging along because that's what you have to do. So just like a couple takeaways is that your diagnosis does not define who you are. This diagnosis can actually help you become the person you're meant to be. It can help you become a better person. You'll realize your strengths, you'll realize your weaknesses, but I think that every affected adult in here is stronger than they know, and every parent in here is stronger than they know, and it may take going through something like this to realize that. And then I would also say you can also accomplish your goals. Sheri said we can't do everything, but we can do a lot of things, and you may just have to modify what you can do. And that's it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kendra, who's going to be talking to us about making lemonade.
Okay, so my name is Kendra Gottsleben, and I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I will help you understand why I have the title, Making Lemonade. The motto that I live my life by is, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. So there's the title. But so I was born in November 3rd, 1984, but I was diagnosed at the age of 4. But the way I was raised was very much looking at life in a positive attitude. And I never really our family never looked at me having MPS like as a difficult thing. We just took everything as they come. We always fixated on what I could do rather than what I couldn't do, because I remember very much as a little kid that my mom would say, the word can't, it's not in your vocabulary. You have to at least try it before you're able to say that that is too difficult to do. And so those images before were my dad and my mother. So when I was born, and then probably I was about 3 or 4. When I learned more about MPS as a freshman in high school, we had to do a really hard research project that we were learning about, and they had said, pick a topic that you're really interested in learning more about. So I knew I had MPS at that time, but I didn't know all the ins and outs. So that's when I started learning more about MPS so that I could become more of, an advocate for myself as a patient when I go into the doctor's offices. One of the biggest accomplishments that I'm most proud of is being a part of the clinical research trial for Naglazyme in 2002, and I lived there for 6 months in Oakland, California. I graduated in 2010 from Augustana University and with a sociology, psychology major. And the dress picture is my senior prom with a good high school friend. And then the other picture is when I graduated college. I took the 6-year route during college because I had to, work the infusions. So I would do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class schedule, or for a semester, or I would do a Tuesday, Thursday, so that I could, work with my infusions. So for the past 8 years, I have been working at a nonprofit, and I'm a marketing communication specialist, which has been an amazing opportunity for me. It's a nonprofit that works with, it's called the Center for Disabilities. So I'm a marketing communication specialist with helping, programs in South Dakota, learning with families and advocates, and we talk about transitioning into adult care. But what, for me, as I've been transitioning, is my office is located on the same campus as many of my local doctors. So I can, leave from my office and run over for an appointment, and I don't have to, get in a car. There's a few that are outside my area, but there's some. So when that became cumbersome for like my parents trying to go with me, I just finally was like, well, it's on the campus that I'm on. It's too hard to look at my mom's schedule and my schedule, so I just started going to appointments on my own. And if my parents can make it, they're more than welcome, but ultimately, I'm the patient, and I'm the one that makes the decisions about, surgeries, healthcare, the options that I want to do, and that was part of that transitioning from the peds world into the adult world. But because I don't drive, there's many times where my parents, we do have to figure out the working schedule because I do a lot of doctoring up at the University of Minnesota. So, there is where I need transportation help. For me, naturally, transitioning was as I aged. The more I aged, the more I asked questions, the more I was in the driver's seat with the doctors. It just kind of naturally came to me. I've always been very comfortable in the world of medicine. I think, so sometimes it's not nerve-wracking for me to, talk to doctors and learning about like, okay, this is what I need to do, and stuff like that. But one thing that I use a lot is my local hospital in Sioux Falls, and then the University of Minnesota has an app called MyCharts. And so I use that very heavily when communicating with doctors regarding surgeries or appointments, and that's come very handy because you can't email them all the time because of HIPAA and stuff like that. But that's another part of advocacy for me, was moving into that. But a lot of people, there's a new term called supportive decision making that I've talked about in my world at work. And that's kind of what this next point is, that just because we're an adult and transitioning from the peds world to the adult world doesn't mean, we make the decision, but that doesn't mean we don't ever probably talk to our parents or other people that are important to us to make those decisions, because when you have MPS, there's a lot of things that you have to weigh. So I ultimately do make the decision, but I definitely consult my parents and say, what do you think? Do you think this is a good thing or not? But I live much of my life I'm the only one who's truly the expert on myself, and as you can see and you will hear, a lot of us are like that. My beliefs, my experiences, my preferences, and my future. While I appreciate feedback and assistance, I am the captain of my ship.
Our next speaker, thank you, Kendra. Our next speaker is Adele Kary, and she's going to be talking about orthopedic challenges as an adult with MPS I.
Is it on? Hello? Okay. Testing. Okay. Hi, I'm Adele Kary. I'm going to talk to you about some orthopedic challenges and share with you my journey to find solutions to live a more fulfilling and quality life. I know so initially when they asked me to speak about orthopedic challenges, I was like, well, so many more people who are affected with MPS have so many more challenges than me, at least I thought. But then I really thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? It's not a competition. Somebody might have had more challenges and be more affected, and some may not than me. I may have had more surgeries, or they may have had more surgeries than me. It's not a competition. We're all here to support each other, to learn from each other, you know, to share knowledge. And so I was like, okay, I think I can do this and share what my journey looked like with my orthopedic challenges, and then the solutions that I have found that have helped me, you know, create a better life for myself. And honestly, this journey is as continual. I mean, I'm constantly learning because I actually only was diagnosed 4 years ago. I was misdiagnosed all my life. Switch there? It didn't switch there. Okay. I'm actually going to use my iPad for my talking points because I'm actually getting corneal transplant surgery in 2 weeks, so I can't see that. Can barely see this. So I started my life kind of like Forrest Gump. You know, the magic legs that he had? I actually had the braces on my legs when I was an infant. So when the Forrest Gump movie came out, I was like, those are my magic legs. That was like so cool. And the other thing that I had that was an orthopedic issue was, so all kids have growing pains. And I had growing pains. So when my mom would go with me to a doctor or talk to my pediatric doctor, she would explain, you know, my daughter is in massive pain. Like, she's crying, she's like, you know, can't stand it. She can't sleep, she can't get comfortable. And the doctor was just like, oh, it's just growing pains. She's just, you know, having it hard and she can't take it or whatever. And that's kind of what it was chalked up to. You know, oh well. So it was bad. And then, so I also have the classic claw hands or contractured fingers. And so with that, I have difficulty using utensils, cutting with scissors, and holding things. When I hold like cans or whatever, I have to like crunch them to, otherwise I can't hold them and they fall and make a mess. And then opening things, I've always had a hard time opening bottles, opening, I mean, you name it, opening cans, opening anything. A story back when I was in nursery school, and kids are supposed to kind of learn how to use scissors, and you're doing crafts, and you learn how to use utensils and you're eating or whatever. Well, I kept on getting in trouble because I cut differently, and I held my utensils, my spoon and my fork differently, and I ate funny. Well, that was how I could do it. I mean, we have to adapt ourselves to do how we need to do. But because I looked normal, except for my hands, I was kind of reprimanded and told, no, you have to do it this way. No, you have to do it this way. And then finally I went home crying. I was like, Mom, you know, and so she went back to my nursery school teacher and she was like, can she do it? Is she accomplishing what you, and they're like, yeah. And they're like, then that's how she's going to do it. And so from then on, you know, I have always held my silverware different and cut different. When I was a kid, my dad used to put these spongy things around my silverware so I could actually hold them because they kept on falling out of my hands because I can't grip them. I have mobility limitations. I've always had issues with certain ways, you know, that I would move my body, certain positions, different ways of sitting, and can't put my hands over my head as well and stuff like that. And I was actually, though, I wanted to be in gymnastics when I was younger. And so my mom allowed me to. I was also in dance. So in gymnastics, all my friends were doing these things and they started going to competitions. Well, I wasn't allowed to compete because I didn't have the form. I couldn't like finish like you're supposed to finish and stuff like that. I still had fun, and that's all that mattered to me. So I couldn't go on a competition, but I enjoyed gymnastics and dance and everything like that. I also have spinal compression and cervical stenosis, and I have carpal tunnel. So as a kid, I had carpal tunnel, and the issue is, you know, with doctors, I think we need the awareness to be out there with the orthopedic doctors and stuff like that. If a kid actually comes to an orthopedic's office with carpal tunnel, hello, you know, that needs to be considered that there's a problem, and hopefully they know about MPS, or hopefully we can help spread awareness about MPS, that that's a genetic thing, because I didn't know I had MPS all this time when I was a kid. I was just this question mark. But actually what happened was when I was 5, my mom took me to Boston Children's, and I went through tons and tons and tons of tests, and I was misdiagnosed with a bone deformity called Madeline deformity. But I didn't have the classic case. I was more mild. But that's what I went through most of my life thinking I had, was this bone deformity. Interestingly, when I had carpal tunnel surgery, about 10 years ago, remember, I thought I had this bone deformity, and I was talking to him afterwards, and we were talking about it, and he said, "You don't have Madeline deformity," and he put up my X-rays into the thing, and he specifically explained why and what it would be if I had it, and I said, "Okay, then what do I have?" And he's like, "I don't have a clue," and he said, "You know, you're probably just a hiccup, you know, you were a result of a hiccup in your mom's belly when she had you." Hello. So that gave me this, okay, I don't have this thing that I thought I had all my life, so now I have this big question mark. That gave me kind of the motivation to be like, what's wrong with me? He obviously didn't give me guidance, but I was motivated to go further. So with that said, I had to learn, oops, I need to do the clicker, right? I had to learn to be your own superhero. I had to be my own superhero, and this is kind of like my, I don't know, my mission is to help people understand in the rare disease community, people who are affected and family members to encourage their children or their siblings or whatever to be their own superhero. And I know we've been talking about the transition thing, and those of us up here have talked about that as well, of self-advocacy, because that's huge with us. I mean, we have to, and I'm not just talking about in medical. I'm talking about in anything we need to do for ourselves, because nobody's going to do for you. I mean, you could think your parents will, but you know, someday they may not be able to. Or, you know, when you accomplish something yourself, whether it's you put on your shirt by yourself without your parents' assistant, or whether it's you drove for the first time, you walked, you know, a block or whatever. I mean, that instills so much security and confidence and helps build self-esteem. So I believe so much in being your own superhero. And with that, to do that, obviously, you know, research. I got diagnosed 4 years ago, and I have tried to learn so much about MPS and rare diseases and lysosomal diseases as I can, because I want to understand myself. But now I'm big on advocacy and helping spread awareness. Part of it's because I don't look or present like the typical person with MPS I. And so most people who see me and I say I have MPS I, they're just like, oh, I thought you were a parent, or I thought you were a sibling. And with that, I think that because I can be a voice, I can help those and help awareness and advocate for those who can't with MPS or rare diseases, and that's kind of my mission now. So the other thing with being your superhero and self-advocacy, ask questions. Ask tons of questions. And I'm not saying just to your doctors. Get on the Facebook groups and ask questions to anybody within the MPS community. Ask questions about how to do things. Ask questions to parents, or I know I go on, when I got diagnosed, I had no clue what to do. This woman helped me tremendously to figure out how to guide through this, you know, new journey of mine. And then create your team. Create your medical team, create your support team, create your support circle. And then there's tons and tons of nonprofits out there, like the MPS Society, NORD. I know you've probably learned about many of them while you've been here. So create that team to support you through your journey. Also, figure out what works for you, what works best. So with the tools, with me opening things or having difficulty opening things, I have various tools that I need to open things, because otherwise, like, I live alone. Otherwise, I'm going to be going to my neighbor and going, can you please open this for me? And sometimes I get really frustrated because it literally takes me 5 or 10 minutes to open things. I try this, I try this, I try this. Can't do it. I'll bang it up against the wall, whatever. I know. Also, supplements. I'm learning, yes, I have to take, I'm on ERT. I have to do the normal pharmaceuticals. But I also have learned that there are other things that can help, different supplements that'll help me with my inflammation, taking different foods for anti-inflammatory foods, various things that can help. So figure out what works best for you. And then, so one of the things I did recently, I guess about 2 years ago now, I lived in a fairly large house, 2-story house when I was in Orlando, Florida. I would fall down the stairs a couple times, and I lived alone, and so I was like, you know what? This kind of isn't very safe for me anymore. So I decided to get rid of everything, and I moved to North Carolina, and I live in a tiny home. And yes, it's an HGTV, like, tiny home that you can walk to the bathroom in 10 steps. That's because I wanted to live independently the rest of my life, and I knew as I got older, because I have seen the decline, I'm gonna, not be, I wanted to live independently as long as I could. I may have to be in a scooter, I may not be able to be as mobile for as long as I'd like. So living tiny is the best thing for me. Plus my tiny house community is very supportive. And so also get in tune with your body. So I had to learn my new norm, and my norm changes probably on a daily basis, but I know now I can push myself and I can push my limits, but I know consequences, and I'm still figuring things out, but figure out your norm. What is your norm? And so one of the other things that I learned is I'm in physical therapy. I get treatment on Tuesdays, and then I go to physical therapy on Wednesdays. And it's a special physical therapy. It's called myofascial, and it really helps me because I figured out that works for me. So anybody here who is interested in those type of things, check out myofascial. Google it, see if your physical therapist does that. And then I also do daily stretches. I worked with my physical therapist to teach me what I specifically need for myself, what works, what issues I'm having, and they'll help me figure out what stretches I needed. And then I do pool exercises. Basically those are the things that I have found that help me. There's solutions to help me live a better life. And I'm continuously adding to this. I'm asking questions, I'm researching, because I want to live the best life I can. So I wanted to share this with you. I know some of us have kind of touched on this very thing. You're not confined only you are confined only by the walls that you build yourself. So the last thing I'd like to say and leave you with is we all want a cure, okay? This is kind of my mission is, so in order to find a cure, you have to have clinical trials, right? Okay, well, in order to have clinical trials to be successful, there have to be participants in clinical trials. So I really encourage anybody to please participate in clinical trials or spread awareness about the clinical trials, because the only way that we can actually find a cure is building awareness and participating in those clinical trials. So I work for a nonprofit, Gene Spotlight, and we help to raise awareness and about these different clinical trials that are out there to help find a cure. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our final adult speaker, Erica Thiel, who will be talking about conquering adult transitions.
It's on. Okay. I apologize, guys, but I'm going to read off a paper. I just do better. So I actually wasn't diagnosed until I was 21, and because of that, transition is kind of a big interest to me, and partially because I had issues early on, and I've had to date 67 surgeries, and at least half of those could have been prevented had I been treated earlier. So when I was asked to give this talk on transition to adult care, a lot had went through my mind. Many memories and thoughts of my own transition at 18 or 19, and the huge changes in my care that took place back then, which was in the 2000s, so before this was really even a talked about issue. There wasn't much support. I kind of just did it on my own. I mean, my parents are very supportive of what I go through, but they really weren't. I just did it on my own. I found my own providers. I'm 35 now, and a lot has changed in this world. Honestly, it's really nice to come to these conferences and see how much that it's improving, what is available to help adults, and especially teenagers. But us adults that are older, we need the resources and the help too in what we go through. So one of the big things that I dealt with was we hear a lot in our MPS community about providers who are really educated on MPS, and in my own case, I found actually, because I live in Wisconsin and we really don't have providers that are experts in it, and when you're an adult, there really are no experts in MPS because there really aren't a lot of adults who are expert or have dealt with these issues yet. So I learned that I just had to do it on my own. My insurance has changed multiple times. It's kind of silly, but the best thing I've found is sometimes I'll ask around and I'll be given 2 or 3 provider names in whatever specialty I'm looking, and I'll email those providers. And then most of the time they respond back to you, and then I choose 1 or 2 of them, meet with them, which was the case with my primary doctor. She's internal medicine. I had needed to switch about 3 or 4 years ago. So I emailed the one that I have now. She responded back to me. She admitted that she knew nothing about MPS, and right there, I know that would actually be a really big reason a lot of people wouldn't choose a provider, but to me, a doctor who admits that they don't know, but they're willing to learn, that's the doctor that I want, because for one, I don't present like a typical MPS I patient, even though, like I said, I've had 67 surgeries. I'm having another surgery next week. Issues-wise, by the time I was 2 or 3, I was dealing with the typical MPS I issues. So transition to me, it's just been wild. So my care team in the last 10 years has often been like this, reaching out to different doctors, seeing who responds, finding whichever of them I thought was the better fit. I've been going from peds to adult care, obviously, a lot longer than 10 years, but in the past 10 years, I've made a lot of changes to my team, and I learned early on reaching out to the doctors was often a good way to gauge if they might really be willing to take on a very complex or often atypical case. Some of my best doctors are doctors that knew little to nothing about my diagnosis, but they learned, and they learned with me. I don't really want the doctor who's going to take on my care and they want to be the boss of it. Whether it's my stubbornness, I don't know, but I want to be equally in charge of my care. I want to be in charge of making the decisions. I go to my appointments alone. My parents are not with me. I live on my own, and I've been doing it since I was in high school. So even on the rare occasion, like surgeries that my parents are there, I need my providers to talk to me. So I find when I go to appointments alone, and I know this isn't right for everybody, but it's what works for me, that then they realize that at those rare appointments that my parents might be there, that they still need to talk to me, and I am the one managing my care. I do not look like a typical MPS patient, and I appear very mild, and honestly, my doctors in the beginning considered me Shay, and now they consider it Hurl or Shay, and I don't think either one fits. I'm just MPS I. When people ask, I just say MPS I, because I don't know. I don't know what attenuated, I guess, is the best way to put it. Most would never guess that I've had just under 70 surgeries, but most of my team, which is now spread at 4 hospital systems in Wisconsin and 2 outside of Wisconsin, look at me for not how I appear. And I think that's very important for all of us because, like we've all said, we are so much more than our diagnosis. My doctors look at my issues for not how they should present in an MPS booklet, but how are they presenting in my case. And then we go from there, and sometimes they reach out to the MPS doctors. Sometimes they don't need to. Sometimes I reach out to the MPS doctors, and honestly, most of the doctors in the MPS community are fantastic about getting back to us. And my primary doctor especially has been really awesome about talking to a couple doctors in our MPS community. My genetics doctor actually is at Boston Children's. He's very good in our MPS community. And he primarily is the only really MPS expert that I see. And the rest of my 15, 16, or 17 doctors are doctors that I've trained, or maybe they knew a little. And it's just worked better for my care. I guess I share all of that because it's often complicated. Like the lady who spoke earlier, transition isn't easy. It doesn't matter if you're 5 growing into being an older kid and you're healthy, or you're a teenager and you're transitioning to adult care. Transition in life is just hard in general. The care team that we start with at one age is often not the care team that we're going to need in 4 years, 5 years. The team that I started with at 21 is not the team that I have now, minus 2 of my doctors. The 2 doctors actually that diagnosed me. And sometimes it's hard to lose those doctors, and sometimes it can be really hard to make change. But at least for my own care, honestly, even though on occasion I miss a few of my old doctors, and I keep in touch with a few of them, I've also realized that my care is a lot better than it used to be, and our needs change over time. Like I said, the 2 doctors that I've kept are my pulmonary doctor and my adult congenital heart doctor. And I feel like for patients who are aging, going into the adult world, if I can say one thing to families who are dealing with cardiac issues, instead of going to an adult cardiologist, find an adult congenital heart trained doctor, because they are trained in both internal medicine and pediatric. So they often understand our disorder at least a little bit better, and they know where to go to learn about it if they, for some reason, do not know anything about it. And one of my biggest issues, because it wasn't diagnosed as a kid, is I've had 47 surgeries for communicating hydrocephalus. And that too, if it's diagnosed as when you're younger and caught early on and you're shunted early on, it's much more manageable as you grow older. And in my case, because I had those issues as a kid, but MRIs were done, x-rays were done, but it was often chalked up to migraines or sinus headaches, because hydrocephalus headaches are very similar presentation to sinus and migraine headaches. And this was the 80s, and I mean, no offense to the medical world, but they didn't know what they know now. And if you don't have a diagnosis to boot, they don't know where to start. And I lived in Wisconsin in a rural city, so other than my cardiology care and later on other specialists and some of the surgeries that I had as a kid, my primary doctor was a local small town doctor, so they wouldn't have known, I guess, that maybe they should have looked outside the migraine and headache thing. And honestly, I dealt with so many pain issues and joint issues and other health problems like carpal tunnel very early on. But I didn't know that those, I mean, I knew, but for one, I had 4 siblings, including a twin brother who was healthy in that picture. And I suppose maybe I just wanted to be like them, so I never said anything about the symptoms I had. And my parents talk about it often. You know, they notice stuff compared to my twin brother. But because I didn't say anything, they didn't really push it. Doctors never brought it up. Or if they did, my parents didn't really push them further to get better answers. So I think, again, whether you're a kid or teen or adult, we, as patients and as parents, it's really important that not that you make too much of what your kid is dealing with, but pay attention to the symptoms that they have. Because I think I know my parents feel really guilty about not getting that diagnosis sooner. And even when I think I was a freshman in high school, I was sent by a couple doctors to a genetics team. And initially they did a whole slew of testing and that came back normal. But then my parents never went to the follow-up appointment. And my parents talk about that too. Had they went to that second appointment, would the genetics team have thought, well, we need to look outside this typical stuff that we're looking at? And maybe would they have considered MPS earlier, and would some of the issues that I deal with have been treated slightly earlier? And you know, who knows what the answer to that is? Obviously, it was meant to be that I got the late diagnosis, so it's fine. But I think that's what we as a community, and actually 2 of my doctors say it to me all the time, that our rare disease world, if it were going to model after anything to do better helping people transition, the pulmonary or cystic fibrosis world, they've done a really good job helping patients transition from peds to adult world, and the adult congenital cardiology world. They start very early on helping patients transition from peds to adult. And like I said, the adult congenital cardiologists are trained in pediatrics too, so they do see pediatric patients while they're also seeing us adult patients. And I feel like, you know, maybe in 10 years our world, it's not to say that our world is bad now, it's not, but it could improve. And I mean, just to see where it's come in the last 13 years since I've been diagnosed, so where will it be in 13 more years? I'm sure it'll be, because we're all working to make it better for adults, it'll be good. So insurance issues. I work a lot with my case manager at Genzyme, and up until a year and a half ago, I worked with the case manager at my former, I'm still on my dad's insurance, but a year and a half ago it changed, and he retired. So I had a case manager through that insurance because it was an HMO, and most of you probably know HMOs can be impossible, but the case manager that I had, she worked with my Genzyme case manager, and having those people in our corner who help us. It's not that they do it for us, but they help us figure out what we need to do as adults so that we can manage it on our own and we can learn. And like I was at a talk this morning by Kendra and she was talking about how if you start enabling your kids earlier on and educating them, then later on, even though you still help them, they can do much more of it on their own. And that's, it's not that parents can't still be there for your kids, you can. But as parents, you guys aren't always going to be there. So do the best you can to educate your kids and your teens on what they're dealing with. And when you go to appointments, make sure the doctors are not talking to you. Make sure they are talking to your kids or teenagers or whatever age they are. And then after they talk to your kids, they can talk to you, or they can talk to you both at the same time. But often at appointments, doctors only talk to the kid, to the parent, and they ignore the adult patient or the teenager or the little kid in the room. And that it shouldn't be that way. I mean, obviously the patient is there. The only way we as patients learn is by if our doctors include us and educate us. And what that? Oh, okay. Oops. So I would just end on that I try really hard to not let my disorder stop me. I also work for Gene Spotlight, and I work with a couple of the biotech companies to, honestly, my focus to them is how can they better help our adult world, and what can they better do, what can they better do to help get awareness out there, and especially about adults, but also about kids and getting diagnosed. And one thing that I really bring up is, there's so much focus on the pediatric world, but there's not very much focus on like internal medicine doctors, like I said before, the adult congenital cardiology world, all of those subspecialties in the adult world. If we really want to do better, that's something that all of us and the pharma/biotech companies is to work with those companies. And then I would just end on that, like others said, it's important that we do things besides all our appointments and surgeries, because honestly, besides my infusion, which is an all-day thing, and I don't do home infusion, so I drive an hour to my infusion every week, and it runs over 6.5 hours, and then I drive home. But then I usually have 2 or 3 other appointments, which are also an hour away from home. But besides that, because I really want, it's this balance. And sometimes the medical stuff wins, sometimes normal life, whatever that is, wins. But I feel it's really, really important that we find a way to make your disorder or your kid's disorder that it doesn't define who they are. So like I said, I work part-time. I run the Sunday school program at my church, which I really enjoy. Honestly, I tell my kids every week at Sunday school, I start out with that at the beginning of the year. I'm probably not going to remember your guys' kids. It might take me till the end of the year to remember your names, which my kids think that's hilarious. But, it's something I tell people that teaching Sunday school every week is my way to recharge and be reminded that there's something so much better than what we deal with every day. And then I do other stuff that just has nothing to do with the medical stuff, and I think that's important. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. And I apologize, sometimes I do better at this talking stuff, and sometimes I do not. It's just been a long day.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you to all of our speakers. We are going to need to skip the Q&A session because actually our adult attendees have a very important boat cruise to get to. So just a housekeeping note related to that. If you are attending that, please bring your ticket and go straight to the pavilion right now so you can get on the boat. Thank you all.